All right, welcome to the SEC preview with Biscuits and SEC. We're made it to week 2. We have a lot of fun stuff to talk about. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Good to be here again. This is a lot of fun. Excited to be back.
Yep, doing well. Thanks for having us back. It's hard to complain after a great week 1.
Yeah, speaking of a great week 1, what are the impressions and the takeaways from week 1? We'll start with Hank. Go ahead.
Overall, I don't know. It's hard to say just overall, but I guess, top end of the SEC looked very, very good, right? You had Alabama roll. Georgia pulled out in a slugfest, the win against Clemson. A&M struggled a bit at first and then carried ended up pulling away late. But then, you had the bottom end also with not so great showings between – I don't want to say Missouri's on the bottom end, but they sort of hung around with Central Michigan. You had Mississippi State pull one out of wherever they found that victory in the fourth quarter. Credit to them, but it was way too close for comfort. And then obviously Vanderbilt losing to Eastern Tennessee State or something in the FCS. So I think, just overall impressions after week 1, again, SEC right now looks very top heavy. Look like there's a lot of really good teams at the top. There's a lot of teams in the middle we don't know much about, and then there's some that really don't look good at all.
Yeah, so, like Hank said, it looks like the SEC right now is pretty top-heavy, right? Alabama, I think, across the whole weekend is the only one that seemed like they actually, lived up to their ranking. We talked about it on some previous podcasts, like all the production that they lost. Is Alabama going to be Alabama? Yeah, they're Alabama. Like, they look really good. Funny enough, the College Game Day crew, I think in their first show in week 0, nobody picked on that set Alabama to win the national title. Well, Alabama's going to be in the hunt all year. So that was my kind of first takeaway. And then secondly was Georgia. Georgia's offense with JT Daniels, everybody was kind of looking at them like, hey, their offense is going to be high-flying, high-powered. And it didn't look that way. Now they played a Clemson defense that is really good and really salty. But the big takeaway was Georgia's defense. Georgia's defense is the best defense in the country, bar none. It's pretty obvious from the way they played against Clemson, which has weapons all over the field. So, those are my 2 big takeaways. SEC looks top heavy. We can go through all of them. I liked what I saw from Tennessee, except for that little lull there right in the second quarter. And then Texas A&M as well. They're supposed to be right there chomping at the bit to get up. Maybe beat Alabama this year, right? Challenge for the SEC West crown. And they kind of looked a little bit pedestrian in the first half. 10-3 going into the first half, going into halftime, is not okay by A&M standards as with where they are with talent. And then lastly, the third or fourth big storyline I've got is LSU. With all the hype that came in this year, right? We were talking about it. Hey, this is a big bounce back year. They got so much talent. Coach O's still recruiting in the top 5 every year. Let's see what we got with these new coordinators. But most people, I think, especially us SEC people, were like, well, LSU's going to walk into the Rose Bowl and get a dub, no doubt about it. And that is not what happened at all. Chip Kelly, it looks like, may actually have UCLA, back. We'll see at the end of the year. Maybe that loss doesn't look as bad. But LSU is not where they need to be. And if they look like that the rest of the year, it's going to be a long year, and Coach O will definitely be on the hot seat.
Yeah, looking at Alabama, one thing that I noticed is they threw for 370 yards, but 95 was on one play. They rushed for around 170. The offensive production wasn't at the level that it has been in previous years. You can see that the effect of Bill O'Brien is there, but the number of explosive plays kind of masks that a little bit. So I'm curious to see once they get an SEC play and this, the book gets out on Bill O'Brien and those explosives get taken away. Is this a team that is okay getting 370 yards of offense and winning a 2-point game? The fans there are spoiled. I'm just curious of what that looks like.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from there. That's Alabama. That's been the thing, though, right? Over the past few years, like from Lane Kiffin through Sark and now with Bill O'Brien, they beat you with like 3 plays a game, 4 plays, right? where it's just a massive explosive play, whether it's Najee Harris, right, last year with a big explosive run, or it was, Jalen Waddle over the top, or Devonta Smith, right, breaking off one tackle and getting upfield or going over the top. So those explosive plays, it looks like, are going to be here to stay again all year. With the weapons they've got, including the transfer from Ohio State, who's the one who had that 94-yard touchdown catch. So yeah, Alabama's Alabama, and they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Let's move on to this week, week 2 in the SEC. There are several games where an FCS team is being played and things like that, so we won't spend too much time on them, but we will tell you how to watch them real quick, and we'll cover them real quick. Anyway, like this one, Alabama State is at Auburn. That's a noon Eastern kickoff, 11 Central on SEC Network. That's in Jordan-Hare. I mean, if we're talking about that game Sunday morning, something disastrous happens and all the shine is off the Brian Harsin Rose.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, go ahead. You can start it.
Yeah, like you said, Auburn is flying high right now. So certainly, if there's any trouble with Alabama State, then that will not go over well on the Plains. But yeah, I mean, I think for a week 2 in the SEC, there's a lot of good matchups to be looking forward to.
Yeah, here's a good one. South Carolina at East Carolina. You don't really think about this matchup. It doesn't pop off the page. But South Carolina going to Greenville, North Carolina to take on the Pirates with a graduate assistant quarterback. It'll be interesting to see what this looks like. If Shane Beamer can string together another W, all of a sudden 2-0, he's got 4 to go to get bowl eligible.
Yeah, Stephen, I actually, to go back to a second to Auburn and Alabama State, I wrote a question mark down in my notes because, Auburn's going to be fine. Who cares, right? Like, this game doesn't matter that much. It's just kind of another tune-up for Auburn before Penn State next week. The South Carolina game, though, is a little bit more interesting. I mean, East Carolina has been really bad for a few years. I mean, they haven't won 5 games since 2015. But they do have history, right? I mean, they've beaten Virginia Tech before. They beat South Carolina in 1999. And, they beat UNC, I think it was 3 times since 2013. So, don't overlook these guys, right? Especially with South Carolina that lost so much, as we know. They looked good last week, right? I'm all on the Zeb train. If Zeb starts again this week, let's go. I hope he throws for another 4 TDs. We'll see if he does. It looks like Luke Doty may be back, but it's going to be game time. I don't think Shane Beamer is going to tip his cap yet to let us know who the starter is going to be. But Kevin Harris is also back for South Carolina. I think the Gamecocks roll in this one.
Yep. All right, that game is on ESPN2. Now, the next game that we're talking about is on ESPN at noon, 11 Central, and it's Pittsburgh and Tennessee. This game is Tennessee's season. There is no path to a bowl game for Tennessee that doesn't include a 4-0 conference slate. So, how do you see this going? Will Joe Milton be able to improve from last week where he completed 1 pass in the second half?
I'll start it. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to say, honestly. Tennessee, I think their week 1 performance against Bowling Green was fine. We know Bowling Green is not going to be a good team at all, so it's hard to take a lot from it other than the offense has totally changed. Heupel's fingerprints are all over it. They're running fast and loose, which I think for most ball fans was a welcome sight. But, yeah, it's going to be put to the test this weekend because, Pittsburgh is – I don't want to say a great team or even, a top 25 team, but they're a solid program. They compete, at the mid-level of the SEC or ACC every year. So, when you get Tennessee playing a team like that, it's a good measuring stick, right? What can Joe Milton do against a team of equal competition or near equal competition that's coming in well coached with guys that had offers from, Power 5 schools all over the place. So it's going to be interesting to see. And like you said, without this win, their path to a bowl gets really tough. So, Heupel, the pressure is going to be on him to win this game. Just on paper, you look at it, Tennessee fans aren't going to be happy losing to Pitt. It doesn't matter the current state of the program or how good Pitt may or may not be, they're not going to like that. Similar to the way LSU felt losing to UCLA, right? UCLA might be a really good team, but that's never going to sit well with your fan base losing to a mid-level ACC team. So the pressure will be on. I personally, I don't have a ton of faith in Joe Milton. Not that he can't win the game. I think Tennessee could win the game, but to say that Joe Milton will show a ton of improvement from week 1 to week 2, I'm skeptical of that. I mean, he didn't make the cut at Michigan for a reason, and credit to him for coming to Tennessee and winning the job, but he didn't show a ton through the air in week 1 against Bowling Green, so I'm not optimistic he does that in week 2.
Yeah, I heard a joke about Joe Milton after week 1 in Tennessee, and it's like if you need Joe Milton to throw the ball 40 yards, he can throw it 40 yards. If you need him to throw it 30 yards, he can throw it 40 yards. So that's kind of how that game went.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I think with Tennessee, I liked what I saw out of the running backs, right? Joe Milton looked good early and then kind of fell off a little late after some adjustments were made at halftime. But, yeah, like Hank said, Pitt is a middling ACC team. I think Bleacher Report picked him to finish third in the Coastal. So, they're no slouch. They've also got a fifth-year senior quarterback in Kenny Pickett. Who's going up against Joe Milton, who's in this new offense, right, who didn't have a lot of time to prepare and get ready for the season because he transferred in late. And so we've talked about it, too, before, in the season preview. Like, Tennessee, the cupboard is just bare. So many people transferred out, right? And you look okay against, a mid-major team that's not Power 5, that, just isn't that good. But when it comes to playing an ACC team like Pitt, I think you can get exposed really quick, and I think it's going to be close. But I do think that Pitt takes this one in the end.
Yeah, one thing to look at in this game is you really need 22 defenders overall. Tennessee had all that attrition to come through. Their high play volume defense, it's going to be kind of iffy. The numbers are not going to be where it's supposed to be. Look for them to wear down as the game moves on. So the game will be won by Tennessee in the first half of the game if they can develop a lead. If it gets too close in the second half, I don't know if that defense is going to be able to hold up.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's move on to Tampa, Florida. Florida goes on the road against USF. That is a 1 p.m. start on 12 Central on ABC. That's in Raymond James Stadium down there in Tampa Bay. It's a nice stadium. That's an hour away from me. And I'm actually looking forward because I got the Citrus Bowl an hour one way and I've got the Outback Bowl an hour the other way. And I just need Ole Miss to play ball.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. Get them to the Outback Bowl for you. So I think in this game, this is also one of the storylines we didn't talk about at the outset, but this is the big one, right, that everybody's looking at. If you're a Florida fan in Gainesville or if you're an SEC fan and you're looking at Florida like, hey, what's going on at quarterback? I mean, Emory Jones, I was saying it this, at the start of the year, previewing the season, like, I think people are kind of sleeping on Emory Jones. Well, I think the kid has a ton of talent. But he did not show it in that first game. And he's got a kid right behind him, Anthony Richardson, who looked really good. So, we'll see what happens. I don't think Mullen's going to say too much about it, like, how many snaps each is going to get. But I know Anthony Richardson's going to be in that game because you have Alabama coming up next week. This is a classic look-ahead game, right, where you've got a huge matchup the next week. And this week you've got, a matchup that you should win walking away, so you overlook it. But so I'm interested to see that with Florida. And then on the other side, I think Florida is going to rock these guys. I don't think they're going to have any trouble with them, to be honest with you. Looking at UCF, I do like Jeff Scott, the coach who came from Clemson. He was the co-offensive coordinator there for a long time with Tony Elliott. But they're not there yet. I mean, they're bad. Bleacher Report, I think, picked them to be last on their side of the division. So Florida should win this one walking away.
Yeah. What do you say, Hank?
Yeah, I say the same thing. I mean, NC State took USF to the woodshed last week. Florida, quarterback competition or not, either quarterback that trots out there is going to have the advantage. So I don't expect the Gators to have much trouble here, and I do expect Anthony Richardson to get a ton of snaps in some, specific packages, and then also because I think the game will be out of hand fairly quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him, get a ton of work in the second half. And whether that feeds fuel to the quarterback competition fire, we'll see. It'll probably depend on how they play, but it wouldn't surprise me if it does.
Yeah, interesting to see. South Florida, I don't know if Florida was their look-ahead game and they're not as bad as their 45-0 against NC State looked. But Florida has the look ahead to Alabama. There's a lot of equations that could make this a sloppy game. Florida wins by 2 touchdowns or something like that and just pulls away at the end. So I'm curious to see what it'll look like. I like USF. By the way, they have wrought iron at USF that's really cool. They've got their bull logo on every other wrought iron fence that's like it just in the metal, and it's in there, and it looks really cool, by the way. Just a random useless fact, because South Florida's on the way to the VA for me. UAB at Georgia. Now, this game would probably go to the let's talk about this later, but UAB has a good defense, and Georgia's going through a little bit of a COVID problem right now.
Yeah, so we had the look ahead talking about in the last game with Florida and South Florida, and now you've got the possible letdown, Georgia and UAB here because of the Clemson game. So I think Georgia is going to be fine. I think this is the game, right, where they can figure out their offense. I mean, the offense did not look good against Clemson, but last year I was looking it up. So UAB, they gave up 21 points a game last year, 311 yards. So their defense, like you said, is pretty good. But Georgia just has too much speed, too many athletes, and JT Daniels. And, to me, this week is the week that the offense gets on track and they get a win. Even though I do like Bill Clark's team, I love what he's done at UAB. I think he's done a great job. But Georgia's got too much this week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, UAB is a great story from ending their football program. I don't know how many years ago that was at this point, but, to come back to be where they are is very impressive and admirable. For Georgia, like we said, COVID or not, they've got too much talent. I'm very interested to see their offense this week. Like you said, UAB's defense is not bad, and if Georgia's going to be able to beat Alabama or win a game in the playoff, then they're going to have to be able to push the ball downfield, which we saw some last year. We didn't see that against Clemson, so giving them a much easier test in UAB, are they able to do that, right? So that's what I'll be looking at. I think Georgia's defense will be able to suffocate UAB, and if they wanted to run the ball 80% of the time, they could and could win comfortably. But, what are they going to do with JT Daniels and those weapons just to try to get them some confidence, build up their confidence moving forward and prove that they can move the ball down the field through the air, which we just didn't see in week 1.
Yeah, one thing to look for in this game is if the star of the game is the here right, Georgia has a problem. That's the same old Georgia offense that we've always seen. If the star is Milton or Cook or one of the wideouts, maybe a Jermaine Burton, maybe you can take that as a positive thing. I expect Georgia to win this game by 2 or 3 touchdowns regardless, but that is something to look for because after last week, it goes without saying, there's going to be a lot of eyes on this offense and a little bit of pressure on Kirby to get it right.
Yeah, without a doubt. But yeah, I'm interested to see because, like we talked about, Hank just said it. The defense is going to suffocate UAB. UAB may score 10 points. They may score 3. They may score none. I mean, Georgia's defense is going to lock it down. I have no doubt. So, what does the offense do? And can they get on track?
Yeah, it feels like a 31-3 type game.
Yep.
Next game, Texas A&M at Colorado. I believe they're playing at Mile High, which is pretty cool. Colorado last year had a pretty decent team. I don't know what they did in week 1, and that's on me, really. But Texas A&M, Haynes King, he developed and kind of grew over the course of the game, made some fun improvisation plays, and you can see the potential there for Texas A&M if he puts it together. You can see what can happen. You also can see that there's a possibility of a Kenny Trill type situation.
Yeah, we know about that. Hank, for the Junction blog, I'll let you take that.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it. I think if you watch the game, you saw a lot from Haynes that was promising. He looked pretty confident in the pocket. He was able to scramble some, but I didn't think he was relying on his legs. I didn't feel like he was, making one read and then looking to run. I thought he was working through his progressions. Um, but he just made mistakes. So obviously we have to hope those are rookie or sorry, freshman mistakes, first start. But against better teams, that's not going to fly. I don't know how good Colorado is. They won week one, I think, against Northern Colorado pretty handily, but again, that's not much competition. So it'll be interesting to see how they are. But my guess would be 3 interceptions and a muffed punt against Colorado is going to lose you the game, or you're going to squeak it out. Anytime you do that against a Power 5 opponent, then you're in trouble. So as far as Haynes is concerned, I liked a lot of what I saw, like I said, but he's just got to be smarter with the football. There's a couple throws that he forced. One of them was tipped at the line of scrimmage, which happens here and there, and it's hard to put totally on the quarterback. But either way, when you look at the box score and see 3 interceptions, that's something that can happen moving forward. So we'll see. We'll see what the offense looks like. Against Kent State, I think there was a little bit of an emphasis by Jimbo to make Haynes throw the ball because A&M ran the ball extremely well, and I think would have been able to hand it off similar to, like I said about Georgia against UAB, pretty much every play if they wanted. But Haynes ended up throwing the ball, I think, over 30 times. So there was clearly an emphasis there to get him some work. Make him throw the ball because we're going to need it. So hopefully there's a big improvement from week 1 to week 2, just in terms of the turnovers. But if we turn around at the end of the Colorado game and Haynes has only thrown the ball 20, maybe 25 times, I wouldn't be surprised either. Just given the competition, Jimbo's going to go back to what he knows will work.
Yeah. So Kellen Mond last year threw 3 picks, and Haynes King threw 3 in the first game. So this is a little bit of uncharted territory for Jimbo at A&M. He's usually had Kellen Mond, who's been a fairly steady hand, over his 3.5 years at A&M and 3 under Jimbo. That's obviously the big storyline, right, with A&M is Haynes King and how does he look against some real competition, a Pac-12 opponent. Like Hank said, I expect A&M to run the ball pretty heavily. You've got Spiller and A-Chain back there, and why would you not give those guys the ball? I mean, they're 2 of the top backs in the SEC by talent, and Spiller at the end of the year likely should be up there, in yards and touchdowns and all that. So I expect them to hand it off, go back to what Jimbo knows. And then on the defensive side, I just don't think Colorado has the athletes to hang with A&M. I think, A&M has freaks, frankly, right? I mean, Leon O'Neal in the back had a great game last week. The secondary looks good against the Kent State team, right, who has a really high-powered offense, for a mid-major. I think Texas A&M. The only thing that may can hold them back, that may makes this, close early on, is that you're playing at altitude, and obviously Texas A&M is not used to that. So I think you could see it close early, and then possibly, going to the second quarter, going to the third quarter, I think A&M with their athletes just pulls away.
Yeah. Should be good. And a game that hopefully we will not see because of Oklahoma and Texas in the future. Mercer is at Alabama on the SEC network. I believe that one has probably the lowest odds in the history of odds of being an upset. But we will move on to a game that, you got an old Southwest Conference game, Texas and Arkansas. Arkansas fans are born, they don't even know, they don't even play, but they're born doing horns down. And there's a hatred there and a nice little welcome to the SEC. I don't know if this is going to be a kumbaya welcome to the SEC or just a vitriol-filled mess, but either way, I'm looking forward to it.
Take it, Hank.
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit more of a mess. Like you said, Arkansas fans do not like Texas at all, and they are going to want to send a message. I think they feel that pressure of, this is Texas. It's silly to say, but this is Texas almost, tryout, so to speak. They're coming to the SEC. It's the only SEC team they're playing this year outside of a potential bowl matchup. So Arkansas, I'm sure, is going to want to send a message and say, hey, welcome to the conference. We're glad to have you, but it's not going to be a cakewalk. Sam Pittman, I don't know if they weren't prepared week one or maybe they were looking ahead. Obviously, they pulled away in the second half, but they've got a lot to improve upon. Texas looked pretty solid against a good Louisiana team. Never really was in question in that game. So it seems like, Sark, at least offensively, has Texas in a good spot, which is as expected if you've seen the way Sark calls a game. So it's going to be a challenge. I saw something that I believe Arkansas sold this game out, which is their first sellout since like 2017. So, like I said, the Hogs are going to be excited, ready for it. It's a shame. I think Bumper Pool's going to miss the first half due to a targeting, which is a shame. But I expect Arkansas to be ready, and I think it'll be interesting to see how Texas quarterback Hudson Card does in a hostile environment. He's a young first-time starter as well. So if Arkansas can get any sort of momentum early, if that defense and Barry Odom can confuse him, then they'll be in a good position. I think Texas, again, I think they'll be ready. They know the same thing, that this is sort of an audition for them. You could tell that, again, Sark had his guys ready against Louisiana. They weren't looking ahead. So I expect them to be ready. I expect Arkansas to be ready. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, everybody knows you don't just go 2-0 in the Southwest Conference. You got to really string those wins back together, and they're hoping to get to 3-0 by the end of this month. So we're rooting for the Arkansas Razorbacks on that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Hank hit most of my points there. He nailed it. I'm really interested to see. KJ Jefferson left a lot to be desired in his first game. I think Arkansas fans are kind of a little bit worried about what's going on there. They know he's an athlete. They know he can play because they saw what he did last year, in his one start. But this is Texas now, right? Like, this is a big game. If Arkansas can win this game, what this would do for Sam Pittman's program would be massive. Arkansas hasn't won a game like this in a very long time. And I think, like Hank said, they sold out that stadium. And I think Arkansas fans can feel it. Like, hey, we're right there. We can beat a team like this. Texas has a lot of talent, but they haven't lived up to it for a very long time. And we've got some guys who can play now, right? So we can actually win this game. I do worry a little bit about Bumper Pool being out in that first half. Texas has some solid running backs, right? They got Bijan Robinson and they got Keelan Robinson, who transferred from Alabama and looked good in their first game as well against Louisiana. So, I'm looking at that. And then, again, Hudson Card, like Hank alluded to, I want to see what Hudson Card, has against Jalen Catalon and that Arkansas defense and Barry Odom. What is Barry Odom going to throw at that freshman? And also, Casey Thompson, the other Texas quarterback, played last week as well, in the second half. So if Hudson Card gets, kind of he's back on his heels early because Barry Odom's disguising coverages and doing a great job, with their defense and has Arkansas in the game. Will we see Casey Thompson for Texas a lot earlier than we might have expected? So, like I said, I think this is going to be a war. I'm excited to watch this game. I can't wait for the old Southwest Conference rivalry to be renewed. And I think at the end of the day, I think Texas probably ekes this one out in a, closer than the experts think kind of thing from Lee Corso. So, but yeah, all in all, I'm pumped for this game.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. And good for Arkansas to be, after 30 years of no rivals, they're starting to accumulate old Southwest Conference rivals, and I'm just happy for them. Yeah. Them getting that Texas game back, I'm looking more fun to that than Texas LSU every year. Because there's just the potential for an absolute dumpster fire every time those teams play. It's great.
I'm hoping you're going to see a lot of this, come Saturday from not only the fans when it pans around the stadium, but also from the players. We'll see. Okay,
will it be Big 12 refs? Will that be a penalty?
That's a good question, but I'll tell you what, if we're in an SEC stadium, no way.
Yeah, that would be a bad idea by those refs to call that in Fayetteville.
All right, NC State and Mississippi State. This is an intriguing matchup. Zach Arnett's defense, let's say, struggled in week one. And now coming in as NC State, who put 45 points up on USF and did it rather easily. So this is an interesting home game for Mississippi State. They're perilously close to being 0-2 at home to start the season. But there's a chance to turn it around, but it's kind of a thin one. NC State looks pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the job that Dave Doran has done at NC State. I know a lot of people in ACC country, who cover that league, are high on them and think they're going to finish right behind Clemson there in the Atlantic. So I think NC State's a really good team. I was a little worried about what I saw at Mississippi State. I picked them 7th in the West for a reason. I don't think that they've got the guys this year, and I think going up against NC State, which I believe it's at NC State.
No, it's in Starkville.
Oh, it's in Starkville? Okay, I read it wrong then. So I think that helps them a little bit then that it's in Starkville. But I just think NC State's a good team this year. I think they're better overall than Mississippi State, and I expect NC State to go in there. I mean, they look good. We alluded to it earlier, 45-0 against UCF. They didn't look ahead to an SEC opponent. They took care of business. So I like Dave Doran, like I said, and I think NC State at the end of the day is going to take this one.
Yeah, I totally agree. Brought up a lot of good points there, and I just think right now NC State's the better team. For Mississippi State to have a chance, their defense is going to have to tighten things up a lot. I don't know if they can do that in 1 week. Really, that game being in Starkville will help a lot. I expect the Bulldog fans to come out and make some noise. The cowbells will be loud, so I could see them keeping it close for a while as NC State just sort of gets adjusted to, start. It's a weird environment to play in, as we all know. If you're not used to going there, it's very strange. So I can see them keeping it close, but I just think, at the end of the day, NC State's a better team and should come away with a win, which I know, Bulldog fans won't be happy with.
Yeah, everybody's heard ring responsibly, where they're supposed to ring the bells at a certain time and then stop when the quarterback gets under center. Well, responsibly goes out the window whenever they have a rough season and rough team. So I expect those bells to go out ahead and Dave Doran to have a massive headache come that next day. The next game on the list on SEC Network Plus or ESPN Plus is Ole Miss and Austin Peay. Honestly, if we're talking about this game on Sunday, something horribly happened. So we'll move on past that. Missouri at Kentucky, probably the SEC game of the week. I'm looking forward to that. Will Levis and the guys against that Missouri defense. That's a matchup advantage that I did not think Kentucky had 2 weeks ago, but it looks like they really do. And Missouri is struggling to run the football, and that Kentucky defense is pretty salty.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this in the preview. I was wondering who Mizzou is going to get to replace Larry Roundtree III in his production, who's been their leading rusher for 2 or 3 years. So obviously that's still a question mark. And is it are they going to be able to get that going? I'm not too worried about Bazelak. I like Drinkwitz. I think he's a good coach. But I'm really interested to see. This is a pecking order game, right? It's like Kentucky can jump Mizzou. Mizzou can jump Kentucky. This is going to be who finishes in that second to kind of fourth spot in the SEC East, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal for recruiting. So I'm really excited for this game. I mean, I liked what I saw from Banana Eater and stay-at-home dad, aspiring person, Will Levis, last week, at QB. I thought he did well. That was the big question going into week 1 for Kentucky. Hey, we've heard all this about, they can throw the ball now because they have Liam Cohen calling the plays. Well, yeah, they could throw the ball. It looked pretty good. But that was against inferior competition, very bad competition. And now, this is for real. Now it's against Mizzou. Mizzou's defense looked okay. They kept them in the game, last week. So I liked what I saw from Blazer, who replaced Nick Bolton. That's what I'm looking at. And I think it's going to be a great game. I picked Mizzou actually to be better than Kentucky in the East this year, which I think raised a few eyebrows. But after week 1, I'm not so sure. I think Kentucky looks a lot better than I expected them to. So I think Kentucky takes this one. I'm going to flip it. I think Kentucky ends up taking this one by 6 or 7.
Yeah, Wan'Dale Robinson is a dude. He's just absolutely a dude playing wide receiver, and he makes Josh Ali better and kind of makes that offense better than you think it would be, and they just really needed that position. Everybody's going to talk about Will Levis, and they should, but Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, is what is stirring the drink on that offense.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think he looked great.
Yeah, I can't imagine Scott Frost's reaction as he's watching Wan'Dale Robinson run down the field for, I don't know what he had, over 100 yards, I think 2 touchdowns, and meanwhile his team couldn't throw the ball at all against Illinois. So anyway, that's a different conversation for a different podcast, what's going on in Nebraska. But yeah, like y'all said, this is a really big game. Right now, it's clear that Georgia's number 1 in the SEC East. Who is that 2 to 3 team? It seems like Florida, if you're voting chalk, would be your second team, and then it's kind of whoever after that. I know some people think Kentucky or Mizzou could leapfrog Florida this year. We'll see on that, but this is a big test early for both teams. Mizzou, it'll be interesting to see how they play on the road. Central Michigan, I don't know how bad they are. I mean, that's a Jim McElwain coach team, so although that game was close, it could just be a symptom of Central Michigan being a pretty solid team, and less of an indictment on Missouri. So we'll see that this weekend, right? If Central Michigan was good and Missouri played a good game, then they'll be able to hang with Kentucky and maybe pull out a win. And if Central Michigan's not that good and Mizzou was playing down the competition, then they're going to get beat by multiple scores by Kentucky, because I expect Big Blue to be ready. Mark Stoops is a fantastic coach. And yeah, Will Levis and that Liam Cohen offense looked awesome. Granted, against UL Monroe, nothing special about that defense at all. But again, as far as just what you wanted to see and what we were told the offense was going to be like, it lived up to it. So can they do that against an SEC defense? We're about to find out. My hunch is, they can do some of it. I'm not totally sold on Will Levis yet, just because I've only seen one game. So I wouldn't be surprised if he, takes a little bit of a step back, maybe turns it over a little bit. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he comes out and has a great game. So my gut tells me Kentucky's going to win just based on what I saw in week 1. But I definitely wouldn't count out Drinkwitz and the Missouri Tigers to, pull something out. I mean, they did it multiple times last year where no one expected them to win, and they did. So it should be a very close game. And I expect it to be, coming down to the wire, really, late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, there's Will Levis, as high as he did, as good as he did, there is Kenny Trill possibilities with him as well. There's a flash in the pan possibility that could happen. And I know this, I don't want to make you gun shy, Hank, what's going on. But, yeah, I mean, anytime you see, I just picture that South Carolina game where Kenny Hill could do no wrong, and then, 4 games later he's replaced. So
don't worry, we remember well.
Yeah. The next one we're going to talk about, but we're actually going to talk about this one for a second. McNeese is at LSU, and the reason we're talking about this one is because if LSU loses that game and drops it to McNeese, Ed Orgeron is gone. He won't survive the season. He might not make another week. The starting quarterback at McNeese is Cody Orgeron. He's quarterbacked by his son. So Ed Orgeron has a history of struggling with FCS opponents going back to his times at Ole Miss. There's a game against the Citadel, against Northwestern State, where all that happened. I'm not calling an upset. I'm not calling anywhere close to an upset. I just think that something horrible happened. If all the stars aligned, I mean, you could be at a position where LSU has an interim coach next week.
That would be wild. Not an LSU fan. It would kind of be crazy to see that, and I just love the chaos of college football. So that would be probably the chaos of all chaos if that happened. But now knowing that Cody Orgeron is the quarterback at McNeese, I expect him to throw this game for his dad. I expect LSU to now be up 40-0 in the first quarter. But all jokes aside, I do think that LSU is going to be mad from last week. I think that Orgeron is going to have them prepared this week, and I think they're going to take it out on little old poor McNeese State, and just whip them good. I expect it to be 41-10, 41-15, 14, whatever. So
Yeah.
LSU all day.
Coached by Frank Wilson, by the way. Vanderbilt is at Colorado State. The nightcap at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 Central on the CBS Sports Network. Vandy is bad. Vandy is like Kansas bad this year. I feel bad for them. Clark Lee has his work cut out for him. Like I said, I'm the president of the Ken Seals fan club, and he struggled mightily in that game against East Tennessee and the Fighting Randy Sanders. And I just want Vanderbilt to somehow pull this game out, because Vanderbilt's where I had my brain surgery. I have a soft spot for Vanderbilt, and this is going to be a long year, Commodores. This is going to be a real long year.
Eating at you, Stephen, as the president of the Ken Seals fan club. You gotta defend your guy.
Yeah.
And in our preview of last week, I said I liked him too. He looked good last year. He was kind of a bright spot for Vandy, but last week was ugly. You just can't lose to ETSU. So I'm a little worried about this game. I think the best thing for Vandy in this game is the fact that they get to go to Colorado and enjoy some of the nice, fresh fall air out there. But I don't expect to win. I mean, I don't think Colorado State's that good, but Vandy is not good at all. So if Vandy gets a win, I think everybody would be surprised and would be, maybe Vandy's okay this year. Maybe Vandy's going to keep it within 2 scores of an SEC opponent. But, yeah, this one's I'd take Colorado State.
Yeah, I think I was actually looking into this game a little bit more than I normally would, because I was trying to see if Vanderbilt was going to be able to win a game all year after they lost to their in-state FCS brother. So I think they have a good chance. So what little I know about Colorado State is that they lost week 1 to an FCS school as well in South Dakota State. That was a 42-23 final, so they also lost by a pretty good margin to South Dakota State. My FCS knowledge is not great, so I don't know if East Tennessee or South Dakota is a better program.
South Dakota State won the national championship last year, I believe.
Oh, well, there you have it.
Well, that's why Colorado State lost.
Yeah.
That's the reason they got 20 burgered by an FCS school.
Yeah,
smoked.
They have a great nickname. They're the Jackrabbits.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's a great college football nickname.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, if Vandy's going to win a game this year, it better be this weekend, because I don't see them getting one in SEC play, and I believe their other out-of-conference opponent is Stanford. So,
who's pretty bad also. They got boat raced pretty good by Kansas State.
Very true.
Are they Vandy bad?
What is Vandy bad? I don't know. I hopefully they can get one. I don't want them to put an offer up, especially after not winning last year, because you get that dangerous threshold of 20 or 30 game losing streak, and as you can't recruit to it, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and a circle of death. And I don't want Vandy to have to go through that.
Yeah, I totally agree, but we'll find out, what Vandy bad really means this weekend, because if they can't beat, a group of 5 team that just lost to an FCS school, then I don't see them beating anybody else. So hopefully Seals can right the ship and Clark Lee can rally the troops. But yeah, I'm not optimistic. I think if I was a betting man, I would bet on Colorado State right now based on week 1. I mean, you don't score a touchdown against East Tennessee State, I don't have much faith.
You should be able to line up and just run the football. Just run it straight down get at least a touchdown. Gosh, that's so bad. Well, that's our week 2 games. Let's go into questions. What are we looking for this weekend? What are some questions that need to be answered to you by SEC teams this weekend? Hank?
So I'll go through I'm sorry, I missed it, but
no, go ahead.
I just jumped in. I think it's kind of some of these top level teams like we were talking about, right? We kind of talked about a few of them, during these game previews. But I'm looking at Florida's quarterback situation, what's going on there. Looking ahead, we got Alabama next week. So who's going to trot out against Alabama in week 3? And that's going to be determined this week with Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. So looking at that, looking at the Georgia offense, can they get it going this week? Can JT Daniels, and those guys that got on the outside, all those athletes, the stable of running backs, can they finally get it going? And then Tennessee, looking at them, again, like we talked about, offense looked a little bit shaky at times, looked really good at times. Running backs look good. How do they look this week against some real competition in a team in Pittsburgh who in the ACC should be pretty good? And then the biggest one of the weekend to me that I'm really watching is Kentucky and Mizzou. Who pulls out of that game? Who ends up being, the team that can challenge Florida for that second spot in the SEC East? And then, who ends up in that pecking order? Who can, be that team that steps up? And I think that's a really even matchup. So those are the big questions that I want answered.
Yeah, those are all really good. Just to take it a different direction, and talk about some other games. I think, being an Aggie, obviously I'll be paying attention to A&M Colorado. I do think, again, as we talked about earlier, that it should be a good litmus test. It's hard to know exactly what Kent State is. For a young quarterback and an offense that's sort of trying to find itself, especially in the passing game, I'm going to really be watching that game. I expect A&M to win, but again, it's sort of how they win, right? Are they able to move the ball through the air? Does Haynes King quit turning the ball over? He looked comfortable. He just kept turning the ball over. So I'm not afraid I'm not worried about how he's going to look in the pocket, but just how does he respond to a 3-turnover game? Does he learn from that and quit forcing the ball? And then, obviously Mississippi State, we hit on them earlier. Year 2 of Leach, this is a big game. Again, SEC schools are never going to take kindly to losing to other conferences at home. NC State, although they are a really good program, they're not nationally known as a great team year in and year out. I don't believe they're even ranked at the moment. So on paper, fans are going to look at that game and think we should be able to beat NC State. So, it'll be a big test for Leach in year 2 and help determine sort of what the fan base thinks after this season, I believe, because we know the SEC schedule is going to be a grind. So you got to get the ones you can early on. If Leach can get one, that'll be a big win for them. I don't expect him to, but it'd be a big win. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond after week 1. And then, after that, we hit on it pretty hard as well, but Arkansas, Texas, I think this game would mean a ton for either program. Were they able to pull out a win? But more than anything, I'm just excited to watch it. I think there's a ton of good storylines here. Like I said, it's going to mean the world to both programs. If they win, you'll have Texas fans shouting that the SEC is not that good and they're going to come in and dominate. If they lose, you're going to have Arkansas and the rest of the SEC fans pile on the Longhorns. So no matter what happens, we're going to have a ton to talk about. Like you talked about earlier, for Sam Pittman, this would be a huge, brick in that foundation that he's trying to build out there, that we can beat a talented team, a ranked team at home. We're protecting our home field. This is not a place that teams are going to be able to come into anymore and just roll over us because they recruit at a high level. We're here. We can hang with these teams, and we can pull out wins. So it's going to be a great atmosphere. I'm super excited to see that game. No matter what the outcome is, it'll be awesome.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to that Pitt-Tennessee game. I do think it is Tennessee season. Michigan State is kind of not Michigan State, that's where they came from. Pitt is kind of the UCLA of the East Coast, bunch of upperclassmen. very well coached against a team that has depth problems, that really goes too fast to play complementary football. I want to see how that works out.
Yeah, I agree with you there. A lot of interesting storylines this week. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes. And we're going to wrap it up right then. Thank you guys stopping by doing a preview for week 2. They'll be back next week to do the week 3 preview. But for Boss Man Slim and Hammer and Hank, I am Stephen Willis right here talking about SEC football and all the joys that come along with it. So until next time, we'll see you later.
Love it.